The stars stretched across the black canvas of space like countless glowing seeds. For humanity, they were no longer unreachable dreams. Ships with metal wings now cut through the void, carrying explorers, traders, and diplomats into lands once thought impossible. Among these travelers was Rin, a young representative chosen by Earth to attend the first trade summit with the Veyari Empire. Rin was not a soldier or a noble. He was a quiet thinker, someone who valued honesty more than power. The Council on Earth had chosen him because he did not carry the pride of generals or the greed of merchants. They believed he would show the Veyari that humans sought peace, not dominance. Still, as his small shuttle approached the massive trade station, Rin could not stop his hands from trembling. The Veyari station floated like a jewel among the stars. Its structure was shaped like a ring wrapped around a bright energy core. Thousands of lights blinked across its surface, each marking a dock or a hall. Alien ships, sleek and sharp, drifted in and out like giant birds returning to a nest. Compared to them, Rin's shuttle felt small and fragile. When the docking clamps locked in place, a voice guided him through. He stepped into the grand hall and saw for the first time the Veyari people. They were tall, their skin shimmering like metal under light. Their eyes glowed faintly, giving them an otherworldly presence. They carried themselves with pride, as if every movement declared their long history as rulers of stars. Rin knew at once that this would not be easy. The summit began with speeches and displays. Delegates from both sides spoke of trade routes, shared technology, and peace agreements. Rin's role was small. He was to listen, learn, and speak only when invited, yet he felt the eyes of many Veyari upon him. Some looked at him with curiosity. Others looked at him with disdain. The feast followed. Long tables were set with shining plates and crystal cups. Food unlike anything Rin had seen filled the air with rich scents. The Veyari nobles laughed, argued, and told stories of battles and victories. Rin sat quietly, unsure of what to say. It was then that she entered. Princess Asera, daughter of the High Sovereign, walked into the hall with a grace that silenced the room. Her silver hair flowed like liquid light, and her eyes shone with calm fire. The nobles bowed as she passed, but her gaze moved past them and landed on Rin. For reasons he could not guess, she walked directly to him. "You are the human representative," she said in a voice clear and strong. Rin stood awkwardly and nodded. "Yes, Princess. My name is Rin, from Earth." The nobles watched closely, whispering among themselves. To them, a human was a child race. To speak directly to the princess was already beyond his worth. Asera studied him for a moment. Then, to everyone's shock, she asked, "Do you want me as your wife, human?" The hall fell silent. Cups were frozen halfway to mouths. Forks rested in midair. Even the air seemed to stop. The nobles stared, waiting for Rin to stumble, to beg forgiveness, or to run in fear. Rin's heart pounded. He could hear it in his ears like drums. His mind raced. He thought of what it would mean. Marriage to a princess was no small thing. For the Veyari, such a bond tied bloodlines and decided futures. But more than politics, he saw the sincerity in her eyes. She had asked him not as a trick, but as a test of truth. So he answered with the same honesty that had brought him here. "Yes." The word hung in the air like a spark. Gasps spread through the hall. Some nobles laughed in disbelief. Others shouted in anger. The idea of a human daring to claim their princess was an insult to them. Yet Rin stood firm, his voice steady, his eyes clear. Asera smiled faintly, the first hint of warmth she had shown all evening. "Then it is settled." She turned to the hall. "I have chosen. This human has answered. Let the Empire witness it." Chaos followed. Nobles argued, voices rising like thunder. Some demanded the marriage be denied. Others muttered that perhaps the princess had her reasons. The High Sovereign himself, seated at the far end of the hall, raised his hand and silence returned. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, fixed on Rin. "You speak with great boldness, human," the Sovereign said slowly. "Do you understand what your answer means?" Rin bowed his head slightly. "I do not know all of your customs, but I know my answer was honest. I will not take it back." The Sovereign's lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Then you must be tested. The blood of my house does not join with weakness. If you are to stand beside my daughter, you must prove your worth before the Empire." Rin swallowed but did not look away. "Then I will prove it." Asera's eyes softened, but her voice was steady. "So be it, the human has spoken. The trials will decide if he stands as my chosen one." The feast ended in turmoil. Some nobles left in fury, declaring that this insult would destroy their traditions. Others stayed, eager to see what would happen. For Rin, the night became a blur of whispers and stares. Yet through it all, one thought stayed clear in his mind. He had said yes. Later, in a quiet chamber prepared for him, Rin sat alone and tried to steady his thoughts. He wondered why the princess had asked him, out of all beings in the hall. He wondered what these trials would be, and whether he could survive them. Fear pressed against him, but beneath it was something else. A strange calm born from the knowledge that he had spoken true. Rin did not know if the Veyari would accept him. He did not know if he could rise to their challenges. But he knew one thing. He would not run. Far away in her private chamber, Princess Asera stood before the window, watching the stars. She thought of the human who had said yes without fear. She had expected him to hesitate, to refuse, or to laugh. Instead, he had answered with a certainty that shook the hall. For Asera, this was no game. She had grown weary of nobles who sought her hand only for power. She had wanted someone who would speak with truth, not calculation. When Rin answered without pause, she saw the courage she had been seeking. The road ahead would not be easy. She knew her people would resist. She knew her father would test Rin beyond what most could endure. But in her heart, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this human was the key to a new future for both their peoples. And so the first step of their strange union had begun, with a single word that echoed across the stars. Yes. The news spread through the station like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, every hall and chamber whispered about the human who had dared to accept the princess. Some called it madness, some called it boldness, many called it insult. For the Veyari nobles, who guarded their bloodlines with fierce pride, the thought of one from a young race marrying their princess was unthinkable. Rin awoke to the sound of voices outside his chamber. He opened the door and found two Veyari guards waiting. Their armor shone like polished stone, their faces unreadable. One of them spoke in a deep voice. "The High Sovereign commands your presence." Rin nodded, straightened his clothes, and followed them. His mind was heavy with questions. What had his answer truly brought upon him? The walk to the throne chamber was long. Along the way, Veyari servants and officials turned to watch. Some looked at him with open scorn, others with curiosity, none with kindness. Rin kept his eyes forward. He reminded himself that he had chosen this path with his own voice. The throne chamber was vast. At its heart sat the High Sovereign, a figure of immense presence. His crown was shaped like wings, and his robe shimmered with threads of light. On his right stood Princess Asera, calm and steady. On his left gathered the nobles, their faces a storm of pride and suspicion. The sovereign's voice rolled through the chamber like thunder. "Human Rin, you answered yes to my daughter before all the empire. Do you understand what this means?" Rin bowed slightly. "I understand that I have promised myself to her. I understand that it is no small matter." The nobles burst into laughter. One shouted, "He thinks marriage is a simple promise." Another sneered, "Does the child race know what it takes to stand beside the blood of rulers?" The sovereign raised his hand, and silence fell. His eyes pierced Rin. "In our empire, a union with the royal blood is not only of love, it is of duty. It means to protect, to lead, to guide our people. Do you still hold to your yes?" Rin's heart pounded, but his voice did not shake. "I do." A murmur spread through the nobles. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Asera's eyes softened, though she did not speak. The sovereign leaned forward. "Then you will be tested. The trials of honor will decide if you are worthy. Fail, and your answer means nothing. Succeed, and you will stand as chosen." Rin nodded. "I accept the trials." The sovereign's voice grew harder. "Do not mistake this for mercy. Many who are born Veyari have failed them. Few survive all three. You may choose to step away now, and your life will be spared." The hall waited. All eyes turned to Rin. This was the moment most expected him to break, to retreat, to beg forgiveness. But Rin only said, "I will not step away. I spoke yes, and I will not take it back." A storm of voices erupted. Nobles shouted in anger. Some warned of disaster if a human passed. Others whispered that perhaps this was fate. Through it all, Asera raised her voice. "He has chosen. He will face the trials. Let us see if truth lives in him." The sovereign struck his staff upon the ground. "So it is decided. Prepare the first trial. The court was dismissed. The nobles stormed out, their robes sweeping behind them. Some glared at Rin as they passed, others laughed bitterly. Only Asera lingered. She stepped close enough that her voice was for him alone. "You have brought a storm upon yourself," she said quietly. "But storms test what is strong and what is weak. I will not guide you through the trials, but I will watch." Rin looked at her and asked, "Why did you choose me?" Asera's silver eyes met his. "Because you answered with truth, not calculation. That is rare among my people. Do not waste it." She turned and left, leaving Rin with more questions than answers. That night Rin sat in his chamber, staring at the stars beyond the window. The weight of what lay ahead pressed on him. He did not know what the trials would demand. He did not know if his body or mind could match the strength of the Veyari. But he knew he could not turn back. For hours he thought of Earth. He thought of the blue seas, the green forests, and the endless sky. He thought of the people who believed in him enough to send him here. He thought of the moment when Asera had asked her question, and the moment he had answered, yes. That one word had tied him to a path no human had ever walked. When dawn came, the guards returned. "The first trial awaits," they said. Rin followed them through the halls until they reached a great arena carved into the heart of the station. The stands were filled with nobles and soldiers, all eager to see the humans' failure. At the center of the arena was a wide gate sealed with iron. From within came the low rumble of a beast. A voice announced to the crowd, "The trial of strength begins. Let the human prove if he can stand before the fury of the Veyari beast." The gate rose. Out stepped a creature taller than 2 men, its body covered in armored scales, its eyes burning with rage. It roared, shaking the air. The crowd cheered. Rin's hands trembled, but he stood his ground. He had no heavy armor, no great weapon, only his mind, his speed, and the simple blade given to him. The beast charged. Rin leapt aside, barely avoiding the crushing strike. Dust rose around him. The crowd laughed, certain the human would be crushed in moments. But Rin did not fight with brute force. He watched. He studied. He saw how the beast moved, how its weight shifted where its scales bent. Each time it charged, Rin dodged. Each time he dodged, he struck lightly, never wasting energy. The beast grew angrier, more reckless. The crowd's laughter faded into murmurs. Finally, as the beast lunged with open jaws, Rin rolled beneath its neck and drove his blade into the weak joint between its scales. The creature howled, stumbled, and fell. The arena shook with the sound. For a moment there was silence. Then the crowd erupted, not with laughter but with astonishment. Some cheered, some shouted in disbelief. The voice of the announcer rang out. "The human has passed the trial of strength." Rin stood, chest heaving, sweat running down his face. He looked to the stands and saw Asera watching. She did not smile, but her eyes shone with pride. The sovereign rose. "One trial is passed. 2 remain. Let the Empire witness what comes next." Rin knew this was only the beginning. The weight of yes was heavier than ever, but so too was the fire in his heart. The roar of the crowd still echoed in Rin's ears as he left the arena. His arms were heavy, his breath unsteady, but his spirit burned strong. He had faced the beast and survived. More than that, he had won. Yet as the guards escorted him back to his chamber, Rin knew the path ahead was not easier. 2 trials still remained. When night came, he lay awake on the bed provided to him. His body ached, but his thoughts were restless. The trial of strength had been physical, clear, and straightforward. But the next trial was called the trial of wisdom. No sword could help him there. He wondered what puzzles the Veyari would set, and whether a human mind could match their ancient knowledge. At dawn, the guards returned. "The second trial awaits," they said. They led him to a grand hall unlike any he had seen before. Its walls shimmered with carvings of stars, lines connecting them into maps of constellations. At the center of the hall stood a tall pillar of crystal, glowing faintly with shifting light. Around it sat a circle of Veyari scholars, their robes heavy with symbols of knowledge. At the front stood the High Sovereign and Princess Asera. The Sovereign's voice rang clear. "The trial of wisdom will show if you are more than strength. Before you stands the crystal puzzle, a relic older than our empire. It has tested kings, scholars, and warriors. To pass, you must solve its pattern and awaken its song. Fail, and it will remain silent, marking you as unworthy." Rin stepped forward. The crystal pillar rose taller than him. Its surface rippled with shifting lights, colors moving in patterns too complex to follow. He touched it and the colors shifted again, forming a puzzle of shapes and sounds. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly. The crowd behind him whispered, expecting failure. Many believed that no human could solve a puzzle created before their species even reached the stars. But Rin did not allow their doubts to control him. He studied the lights. He listened to the faint hums that came when he pressed certain parts of the crystal. Slowly he began to notice patterns. A sequence of colors repeated itself like a rhythm. Each sound matched a star carved on the walls. He thought of the nights on Earth when he had looked up at the sky. He remembered how sailors once guided themselves by stars, finding order in what looked like chaos. Perhaps this puzzle was the same. Hours passed. Sweat covered his forehead. His fingers trembled as he traced line after line. Sometimes he failed, and the lights blinked out in rejection. But each failure taught him more. He did not give up. He kept adjusting, shifting, and testing. Finally, after what felt like eternity, he pressed the last sequence. The crystal shone with a blinding light. A deep, beautiful sound filled the hall like the voice of the stars themselves. The scholars gasped, some rising to their feet in disbelief. The puzzle had awakened. The sovereign's eyes narrowed, but his voice was steady. The human has solved the crystal puzzle. The trial of wisdom is past. Rin stepped back, his legs weak but his heart soaring. He looked toward Asera. She met his eyes, and this time she smiled openly, but not all shared her joy. Among the nobles, dark whispers grew louder. If Rin had failed, they could laugh and dismiss him. Now he had passed 2 trials, and the chance of him standing beside the princess became dangerously real in their eyes. The sovereign raised his staff. One trial remains. The trial of unity. It will decide everything. The next day, the trial of unity began. Rin was led to a shuttle where 5 others waited. 2 were Veyari soldiers, tall and proud. 2 were Veyari scholars, sharp-eyed and quiet. The last was a young human engineer named Lyra, chosen from Earth's delegation to stand with him. The sovereign's voice spoke through the shuttle's communicator. The trial of unity will test not one but all. You 6 will be left on the moon of Drizar, a world of storms and predators. You must survive together for 7 days and return. Fail to cooperate and you will not survive. Only those who understand unity can claim the right to join royal blood. The shuttle launched, carrying them through the void toward Drizar. The moon was a wasteland of jagged rocks, endless winds, and skies torn by lightning. The shuttle landed with a heavy thud, then lifted away, leaving the 6 alone. The Veyari soldiers looked at Rin with disdain. "We do not need a human leader," one said. "Stay out of our way." The scholars nodded in agreement. "This is beyond you. You will only slow us down." Rin did not argue. He knew that words would not change their pride. Instead, he focused on the task ahead. He looked at the terrain, studied the horizon, and said calmly, "First, we need shelter. The storms will kill us if we stay out in the open." The Veyari ignored him, but Lyra supported him. Together they gathered rocks and scraps from the shuttle's supply pod, building a crude shelter. When the first storm came, lightning tearing across the sky, the Veyari soldiers rushed to join them, realizing too late that Rin's plan had saved them. Over the days that followed, challenges grew harder. Wild beasts attacked during the night. Food was scarce. The storms grew worse. At first, the group worked in chaos, each following their own ideas. But they failed again and again. Supplies were wasted, injuries piled up. Rin stepped forward. "If we keep fighting each other, none of us will leave alive. We must work together or we fail." The soldiers scoffed, but the truth was clear. Slowly they began to listen. Rin divided tasks. The soldiers defended. The scholars searched for edible plants and water. Lyra repaired tools and equipment. Rin himself joined wherever he was needed. He did not command with pride. He listened, guided, and encouraged. When mistakes were made, he did not blame but adjusted. When fear spread, he reminded them of their shared goal. By the 6th day, the group moved like one. They built stronger shelter, hunted together, and shared food without dispute. The Veyari who had mocked him now looked at him with respect, though they did not speak it aloud. On the 7th day, as the storms cleared for a brief moment, the shuttle returned. The 6 survivors boarded together, weary but alive. When they landed back on the station, the sovereign and the nobles awaited. The announcer declared, The group has returned. The trial of unity is past. The crowd erupted in mixed cries. Some shouted in anger, others in astonishment. For the first time, Vayari had followed a human and survived. The sovereign's eyes were sharp as he looked at Rin. You have faced strength, wisdom, and unity. Against all odds, you have passed. Yet the question remains, human. Do you truly believe you are worthy to stand beside my daughter? Rin met his gaze without fear. I am only human. I am not stronger than your soldiers or wiser than your scholars. But I keep my word and I stand with those beside me. If that is worthy, then yes, I am worthy. The hall fell silent. Asura stepped forward and spoke clearly. He is worthy. The sovereign did not reply at once. His eyes shifted between his daughter, the human who had passed the trials, and the nobles whose fury grew by the moment. At last he struck his staff upon the ground. So it shall be. The human has passed the trials of honor. His fate now joins with the princess. But let all remember this path is not without enemies. Rin bowed his head. He knew the hardest part was yet to come. The trials had tested his body, mind, and heart. But now he would face the storm of politics and betrayal that brewed in the shadows. And through it all he held to the word that had begun this journey. Yes. The halls of the station no longer buzzed only with whispers of disbelief. Now they burned with arguments, protests, and plots. Rin had passed all 3 trials, something even many Vayari nobles had never achieved. He had shown strength against the beast, wisdom against the ancient crystal, and unity among those who scorned him. To many common Vayari, it was proof that humans were not weak. To the nobles, it was dangerous. In the chamber of the sovereign, Asera stood beside her father. Nobles crowded before them, their robes heavy with gold and their voices sharp with anger. This is madness, one cried. A human cannot sit beside the throne. It will stain our bloodline forever, shouted another. They will think humans equal to us, added a third. His face twisted with rage. The sovereign listened without expression. His hand rested on his staff, his eyes like cold fire. When the voices grew too loud, he struck the staff against the floor and silence fell. The trials are older than any of us, he said. They decide worth, not opinion. The human has passed. That cannot be denied, the nobles muttered, but none dared argue further. Yet in their eyes the shadows of rebellion grew darker. Asera knew many would not accept Rin. She could see it in the way they glared, in the way their words carried venom. When the gathering ended, she found Rin waiting in the corridor. He had been told to remain outside while the nobles raged. They will not stop, she said softly. Rin looked at her calmly. Then we will face them. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You speak as if it is simple. It is not simple, Rin admitted. But it is true. I gave my answer, and I will not take it back. That night, while the station slept, a group of nobles gathered in a hidden chamber. The air was thick with smoke from glowing lamps, and their voices were hushed but fierce. The sovereign will not break tradition, one said. He will let the human stand beside her. Then we must act, said another. If the trials could not destroy him, we will. Assassins were chosen, silent and skilled. Their task was clear. The human must not live to see the union ceremony. The next day, Rin and Asera walked together through the gardens of the station. They were vast domes filled with alien plants glowing in soft colors, their leaves humming faintly as if alive. It was the first moment of peace Rin had felt since the trials. Asera touched one of the glowing vines and said, These gardens were built to remind us of our first homeworld. Long before the Empire, when our people still feared the dark, Rin watched her, listening to the calm in her voice. On Earth, we planted gardens too, not because we feared the dark, but because we loved the light. She turned to him, her silver eyes shining. Perhaps that is why you passed. You do not see as we do, but you find your own truth. Before Rin could answer, a sharp sound split the air. A blade of energy shot past his shoulder, striking a tree behind him. Leaves scattered, glowing sparks falling like rain. Down, Rin shouted, pulling Asera behind the cover of a stone wall. Figures in black armor rushed from the shadows, their weapons flashing. The assassins had come. The Vayari guard stationed nearby reacted too slowly, caught by surprise. Rin had no weapon but a short blade he carried for ceremony. Still, he stood in front of Asera, his eyes scanning for a chance. The assassins attacked without mercy. One leapt over the wall, blade raised. Rin caught his strike with the small blade, the force nearly throwing him back. He rolled. pulling the assassin off balance and struck with all his strength. The attacker fell, his weapon clattering away. Another came from the side. Rin ducked as the blade sliced the air, then shoved the assassin into the wall. He grabbed the fallen weapon and turned, the hum of its energy filling his hands. The guards finally joined, clashing with the remaining attackers. Sparks lit the garden, plants burning under stray strikes. The assassins fought with deadly skill. But Rin fought with something they did not expect. He fought not for pride or power, but for the vow he had spoken. Asera stood behind him, her voice clear and commanding. "Do not let them break us. Stand with them." Her words struck the guards like fire. Their fear turned to fury, and together with Rin they pushed the assassins back. One by one the attackers fell until only silence remained. When it was over, Rin stood breathless, his hands trembling around the stolen weapon. The garden was scarred, the air thick with smoke, but Asera was safe. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm. "You faced them without fear." Rin shook his head. "I was afraid. But fear does not decide what I do." Her eyes softened. "That is why I chose you." News of the attack spread quickly. Some nobles pretended to mourn the attempt, but their hidden relief showed in their eyes. Others were shaken, realizing the human had survived even this. The sovereign called a council. The surviving assassins, captured by the guards, were brought before him. Under questioning, they confessed the names of the nobles who had ordered the strike. Gasps filled the hall as ancient houses were revealed. The sovereign's voice was like thunder. "You would betray the trials. You would betray the empire. You are stripped of title and cast into exile." The condemned nobles cried out, but none dared resist. Guards dragged them away. Still, not all who hated Rin had acted openly. Shadows remained, waiting for their chance. That night, Rin sat in his chamber staring at the stars. His body ached from the fight, but his mind carried heavier weight. He knew that the trials had not been the true test. The true test was winning the hearts of those who did not want him. Asera entered quietly. She sat beside him and said, "My people are proud, too proud. They see you as a threat because you are different." Rin looked at her. "And you," she smiled faintly. "I see you as hope. For too long we have closed our eyes to other voices. You remind me that truth does not belong to one people alone." He breathed slowly, letting her words ease his worry. "I only know that I must keep my word." I said yes. "That is all I have, but I will hold to it." Asera placed her hand over his. "Then hold it, and I will hold it with you." Outside, the stars burned bright, silent witnesses to the storm that was far from over. The assassins had failed, but the struggle was not ended. The union ceremony drew near, and with it the final test of their bond. Would the Empire accept them, or would the shadows rise again to tear them apart? Rin did not know, but as he sat with Asera, her hand warm in his, he felt ready. Whatever came, he would not retreat because he had given his answer. Yes. The days passed quickly after the attack in the gardens. The scars of the battle remained in the broken trees and burned ground, yet life slowly returned to the station. Repairs were made, and guards stood taller than before. But beneath the surface, tension still ran strong. Some nobles accepted defeat, bowing to the trials and the sovereign's command. Others still whispered in shadows, unwilling to accept a human beside the princess. For many common Veyari, the story of the trials spread like fire. They spoke of the human who had faced the beast, solved the crystal, and brought unity to a divided group. For them, Rin became more than a stranger. He became a symbol of something new. The sovereign announced that the union ceremony would be held within 3 days. It would take place in the Hall of Stars, the largest chamber of the station, where the roof was a great dome of crystal that showed the endless sky beyond. When Rin heard this, his heart tightened. The weight of everything rested on that day. He knew more plots might rise. He knew danger still followed him. Yet he also knew that turning away was no longer possible. He had given his answer, and the time to stand by it had come. The night before the ceremony, Rin sat alone in his chamber. The stars outside shone bright, but his thoughts were heavier than ever. He thought of Earth, of the council who had trusted him, of the simple life he had left behind. He wondered if he would ever see his home again. Then the door opened and Asera entered. She wore no crown or robe, only a plain cloak. For the first time, she looked not like a princess, but like a woman standing before him. "You cannot sleep," she said gently. Rin shook his head. My mind is loud, she sat beside him. Do you regret your answer? He looked at her, and though fear pressed on him, his voice was steady. No, I regret nothing. I only fear that I may not be enough for what is to come. Her hand touched his. You have already been enough. The trials proved it. The garden proved it. What remains is not a test of you alone. It is a test of us together. Her words calmed him, and for the first time that night he breathed easier. The day of the ceremony arrived. The Hall of Stars glowed with banners of silver and blue, the symbols of the royal house. Nobles filled the seats, their robes shining, their faces sharp with pride and suspicion. Soldiers lined the walls, armor gleaming. Common veyrie crowded the outer halls, eager to see history unfold. At the center of the hall stood the sovereign, tall and unshaken. At his side was Princess Asera, her silver hair flowing like light, her crown resting proudly upon her head. When Rin entered, a wave of voices filled the hall. Some cheered, others hissed, many murmured in disbelief. A human walked toward the throne, his steps steady, his eyes forward. The sovereign raised his staff, and silence spread. Today, he declared, we witness a choice that shakes the roots of our empire, a choice not made by force nor by power, but by trials and truth. The human Rin has stood against all tests and survived. My daughter has chosen him. Now the question stands before all. Will this union be sealed, or will fear decide our path? The hall buzzed with whispers. Nobles shifted uneasily, but none spoke aloud. The sovereign turned to Rin. Step forward. Speak your vow. Rin's heart pounded, but his voice was clear. I came here as a simple man, carrying no crown, no power, no armies. I was asked a question, and I gave my answer. I said yes. Since that moment, I have faced trials of strength, wisdom, and unity. I have fought for truth, not for pride. I do not promise to be perfect, but I promise to be faithful. I will stand with Princess Asera, not as conqueror or servant, but as partner. This is my vow. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then the sovereign turned to Asera. And you, my daughter, speak your vow. Asera stepped forward, her voice strong and steady. I am daughter of the sovereign, heir to the veyrie throne. For years I have watched nobles fight for power, speaking of honor but seeking only gain. When I asked this human my question, he did not weigh politics or power. He answered with truth. That truth has guided him through every trial. I vow to walk beside him, not above him, not behind him, but with him. Together we will lead not with pride, but with hope. The crowd stirred. Some gasped, others bowed their heads. Even among the nobles, a few eyes softened. The sovereign lifted his staff high. Then let it be sealed. Yet as the ceremony reached its height, the shadows struck again. From the upper balconies, a group of cloaked figures raised hidden weapons. Energy bolts flashed down, aimed at Rin and Asera. The crowd screamed as guards rushed to shield them, but Rin had lived through trials. His body moved before thought. He pulled Asera close, dragging her behind the great stone pillar at the center of the hall. The bolt struck the ground where they had stood moments before. The sovereign roared, his voice shaking the hall. Treachery guards clashed with the attackers. The hall became a storm of shouting and flashing blades. Rin knew this was the final strike of those who refused to accept him. If he faltered now, all he had done would mean nothing. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and stood beside Asera. Stay behind me, he said, though his voice was calm. She shook her head. No, we stand together. Side by side they fought. Rin struck with quick movements, using not strength but speed and focus. Asera fought with skill born of training, her blade flashing like silver fire. Together they pushed back those who had tried to tear the ceremony apart. The crowd, once fearful, now watched in awe. To see the princess and the human fight as one stirred something deep in their hearts. Guards rallied. Nobles cried out in anger against the traitors, and soon the attackers were overwhelmed. Silence returned at last. The fallen were dragged away. The hall was scarred, but Rin and Asera still stood side by side, their hands clasped around their weapons. The sovereign looked at them, his voice proud and fierce. The shadows have failed. The vow stands stronger than ever. Let the empire bear witness. From this day forward, Rin of Earth and Princess Asera are bound. Their union is the union of two peoples, two worlds, two paths. The hall erupted. Some cheered, some shouted, but no one could deny what they had seen. Rin and Asera had stood together not only in words but in battle. That night, after the ceremony ended and the hall grew quiet, Rin and Asera stood alone beneath the dome of crystal. The stars stretched above them, endless and bright. Rin's voice was soft. I never thought my life would lead here. One word changed everything, Asera smiled. Yes. He laughed lightly, the weight of fear finally lifting from him. Yes, he repeated, as if the word itself carried power. Asera took his hand. Together we will walk forward. Not all will welcome us, but together we will endure. Rin squeezed her hand gently. Then together it will be. Above them, the stars shone brighter than ever, as if the universe itself bore witness. The human and the alien princess had chosen each other. Their bond would not only shape their lives, but the destiny of both their peoples. And it had all begun with a question, and a single word spoken with truth. Yes.